just as you need media freedom and news organizations to have a democracy, you need a broader ecosystem in order to ensure that you have credible, accurate, reliable journalism and news, right? So that means you need accountability mechanisms. In talking about media freedom, we always talk about the role of journalists and media houses, and that is critical because obviously without them you don't have credible, accurate, reliable news. But that just as you need media freedom and news organizations to have a democracy, you need a broader ecosystem in order to ensure that you have credible, accurate, reliable journalism and news, right? So that means you need accountability mechanisms. You need institutions like the BCCSA that say if things go wrong, there's a mechanism and there's a form of redress that's independent and that can stand and that is respected and that is credible and speedy, right? And it's the same with other news organizations. Online organizations, formerly print, there's the Press Council, that if there's an issue, you've got an independent system that's there, that's easy to access, that's speedy, and that can help resolve and address complaints, because that's part and parcel of how you test knowledge, how you address things that go wrong, and how you fix them. And that requires an ecosystem, right? You need things that are potentially arm's length from government that are able to operate. That's why you need an independent regulator. What digital is showing us is that on some level there's a convergence of these things, and on other levels you still need things to be separate. So you might say you should have one regulator to rule them all, but I don't think that in our context with the different interests and groups that's necessarily going to work. So you need entities and organizations like the BCCSA, like the Press Council, like ICASA, and critically like MMA and other civil society bodies that are there to say, hold on, we need to find these things to work like this. So MMA's Real 411 is an incredible thing because it's the first. MMA's system like Real 411 is an incredible thing because it's the first system that says, how do we deal with these systems of online harms where you don't leave it just to the platforms to deal with, because that'll be a disaster, as we've seen. They incentivize it. Similarly, you can't put that in the hands of government because that'll be a disaster. You need some mechanism that's independent of them, that's credible, that applies the same standards across the board to do this. And that really is part of what our new media and news ecosystem has to look like and has to include. So you've got to have bits and pieces of all of these things. So on a level, it's making things more complicated, but it certainly shows and highlights the critical importance of an ecosystem around journalism, around media freedom. That it's, you can't have media freedom without news organizations, but you also can't have it without that ecosystem. You can't have it without organizations like ours, and you also can't have it if you don't have a judiciary that's prepared to also help set and frame those boundaries.